Hello everyone, in today's lab I'm going to show you how to export an animation out of Maya and render it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect this little R I had previously to make this able to be selected. And I'm going to make this ground plane obnoxiously large. Alright, that should do it. So now I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to double click R on it so I don't accidentally select it. Now the other thing, I can turn off my grid, don't need it. The other thing I need in order to render this, because if I tap 5, 6, and then 7, if I render it without a light in my scene, I'm not going to be able to see anything, right? So if I hit play, you'll see my bouncing ball. The only thing you can see is that this ball has the yellow controllers around it, but either way. Now, that being said, I need to create a light. So I'm going to go to my Arnold tab. I'm going to go to my lights, and I'm going to do a physical sky. And with this physical sky, I'm going to tap 6 again and then tap 7. I'm still not getting much light. I'm going to go to my attribute editor. And I'm going to increase this intensity to like 5. So I'm going to leave it in my 6 mode because it's not bringing my light up. But if I run a quick Arnold render test, you'll see I am getting light. Now, I brought it to 6. Now if I bring it back to 1, what is the default? It's very dark. But another thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate this just a little bit back. And the reason I'm doing that is because if you saw in the last one, I was getting this sort of grayish ground plane, horizon line, whatever you want to call it. And now you can actually see I've got some light in here, even though it is a bit dark. You'll notice that I've got my shadows here being casted from the light itself. I'm also going to increase the intensity to be 5, and I'm going to try that. So it's much brighter, much easier to see. If you think it's too bright, try 4. It's just a matter of preference. It doesn't matter to me, just as long as I can see the scene. So upping the intensity of the light is definitely a good idea. Now that I've got that set up, I'm also going to go to my channel box layer editor. I'm going to create a layer from selected because I have my light selected. I'm happy with the intensity on it, and I'm just going to call it physical sky layer and save. And now I'm going to also turn that to be R so I don't accidentally select that. So I can't select my ground plane or my sky. I still can select these. I could always create these and put them on layers, but I'm not too concerned about it. And now that I've got this kind of set up ready to render, you probably have this on the modeling tab. We're going to click here and we're going to scroll down for probably the first time all semester, maybe the second, I don't remember exactly. And we are going to switch this to rendering. Now on our rendering tab, you'll notice all of the buttons up here change. So instead of having mesh, edit mesh, mesh tools, mesh display curves, etc., and when I switch to my rendering, it now switches to lighting, shading, texturing, render, tune, stereo, catch, Arnold, blah, blah. All right. So under render, we're going to go to our render settings. And the first thing I want you to do in here, we're going to change the image format. We can change it to a PNG. I'm going to do a JPEG for this one. PNG will hold that alpha channel if you wanted. You would just have to play around with these settings. But we're going to just do JPEG because we actually do want that sky in the background for this assignment. Now, we're saving it out as JPEG files. There's going to be about 20 of them. I'm going to do frame/animation extension. See how it says name.extension single frame in parentheses? That means I can't select a frame range in which I want to render out. So I'm going to change it to be name number.extension. So it's going to be saved out as name number.extension. Now padding frame padding here, you'll see it says file name bouncing ball animation 0001.jpg. If I change this to 2, it's going to be 01, and you want to have extra zeros in front of it, at least one. I typically will do 4 or 5, depending on how many frames I'm rendering. So it'll be 0001 and then 0010 for the last frame at 10. But our last frame isn't going to be 10. Our last frame is going to be 20. So on end frame, I'm going to do 20 down here in my frame range. By frame, meaning you could have it render at frame 1, 1.5, whatever. So in this case, when you do by one frame, it's going to be frame 1, render frame 2, render frame 3, render frame 4. And this could be a little bit extensive. And we're also using the Arnold renderer, just so in case I didn't bring it up earlier. We're going to use the Arnold renderer. Now, renderable camera, perspective, if you had a different camera you wanted to use, it would be down here. You could add a camera at this point, but we're going to skip it. Alpha channel mask. You could, if you were saving this out as a PNG, have no background at all, but we're going to keep that physical sun and sky there, or physical sky, whatever they call it. Image size, I'm fine if you do keep it by default at HD 540. That means your pixel size will be 960 by 540. What is it? What do they call it? 9 by 16 aspect ratio. I forget exactly now. It's 4 by 3. Anyway, so I'm going to go to 1080, so it's going to be 1080, so HD 1080, so that's a default. So it's going to be 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels in height. That's sort of like your widescreen aspect ratio, 16 by 9 if I remember correctly. And then pretty much everything in here is going to be good. If I go to my Arnold renderer, you can play around with all these settings. I'm not going to cover them all. It's too much. Sampling, it's all this extra stuff. I'm not going to cover it right now because it just adds so much processing power and render time to your scene. But you can always, look them up on the side, or if you have questions, you can shoot me a message on Canvas inbox. But this is fine, exactly how we have it. All right. I'm now going to hit close and then render. I'm going to go to batch render. I'm going to click this little box. Arnold does not have a specific batch render. Use the render settings to change the options for the batch render. Okay. So we're going to go back to render settings. I want to see if I can set the folder on this. Okay, not sure if you can. So one last thing, I don't know if you can do it from the render settings. We're going to go to File. We're going to go to Set Project. So that's File, Set Project. And now we're going to go to, by default, it's going to be under whatever you have default here. Mine's HHM35, OneDrive, Documents, Maya Projects, etc. I'm going to go to my Lab 14 bouncing ball. And this is going to be where it's going to save everything out to. So I'm going to go ahead and click Set and Create Default Workplace. Okay? Create Default Workplace. So now when I render this scene out, it's going to batch render into that folder. Another neat feature of this is if I do File and Increment and Save, or let's do Save As first. And let's do, this is Lab 14 and 15 now. Bouncing ball animation, render underscore. I'm going to add a 0 and just click Save As. Now, if I do File, Increment, and Save, I just want to show you. I'm going to go to File, Open. Didn't do it. File, increment and save. Settings, general editor, script editor. Oh, it has no changes to save. Okay, perfect. I was wondering why I didn't save, and that's why it's great to know how to access the script editor. I showed you in a recent video, if you paid attention, but if you skipped over it or whatever, Windows, General Editor, Script Editor will show you some of the last things that you've done in the file. So just an FYI. So what I'm going to do now, close my script editor. I'm going to rotate my camera a little bit, and now I'm going to do File, Increment and Save, and File, Open, and it should have saved. Yep. So it's saved it out as bouncing ball animation render underscore 0 dot. And you know what? Under my render settings, I'm fine with that. I just want to check this real quick. Name, number, dot extension. Okay, I'm good with that. And file prefix name, if it's not set, it's going to use the scene name. You could change it here and it would change the name, the way it saves it out, but I'm going to keep it as it is. So now that I'm basically all ready, one last thing, if I go to view, view, camera settings, resolution gate, it's going to show me my 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio. And I'm going to do Arnold, and I'm going to run a quick test render just to show you. So what you see in this preview here is what you're going to see. I had to zoom out a little bit, so that might cause an issue. Make sure you zoom out if it rendered too closely. And it's because I was rendering literally a half the size image quality before at HD 540. Now I'm in HD 1080. So I just had to zoom out a little bit. But that's what it's going to preview as when I render this out. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to render, and I'm going to go to batch render. And this should take a minute. And it's going to create a new folder called images. And it didn't. Save, Arnold. Or let's do render sequence. And let's hit this little thing here. We're going to render from the camera. Okay. And let's just do render sequence and see what happens. There it goes. So not batch render. I don't think Arnold allows you to do batch renders. I think you have to do render sequence for Arnold to work. So now what it's doing is it's rendering. My video is probably freezing up a little bit. So I'm just going to wait till it's done. I don't know if my audio and everything's coming through clearly in the video because I'm rendering, but it does take a lot of processing. So if you don't have a powerful computer, I recommend using lower settings like that HD 540. I think that might be the last frame. All right, perfect. So I'm on frame 20. It's showing me here which frame rendered last. I'm going to open up my little folder here. Lab 14, images, and you'll see I've got all of my images here in order, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and open up Premiere. So if you do have a slower machine, make sure that you use a smaller size. You just use the default HD 540. It should be fine. If you need to go smaller because you need it to render quickly, or your computer is struggling, just use a smaller resolution size. But at the end of the day, I'm just looking to have this bouncing ball animation. So I'm going to open up Premiere now. I left a link for the trial, depending on the Adobe package you got. If you got the one I think I recommended at the beginning of the semester, let me resize this. If you got the one I recommended at the beginning of the semester, oh, look at that. Isn't that weird? So we'll take this out to here. Keep that little file. I think this is if you're okay. Bring that out a little bit. I'm gonna keep, that should be good. All right, so no, don't do that. Try to get that right. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project. So create new project once you have Premiere open. This is all sample stuff it has given me. Really neat. Give you some cool stuff to play around with. Rename my project name to Bouncing Ball Animation. Huh. Okay. So we'll start again. Replace. I don't want any tutorials. Okay. Because it was the first time I was opening up the newest version of Adobe Premiere, it came up with all this extra stuff. So if that happens to you, because you haven't opened it either, now you know kind of what I did. But you're basically looking to get to this part right here. So I have it named. I'm going to go to File, Project Settings, General. So these are all little settings in here. I just wanted to check to see this is all fine. So what I'm going to do is, if we're going to go to File, let's do Edit. let's import media here. So I'm in the edit tab here. I'm going to do import media. It's a little bit different than previous versions I'm used to. I'm going to go ahead and locate that image sequence. And where is it? Now I'm going to click on the first one, and I'm going to click this little checkbox that says image sequence. Let's see if I can, nope. So click on the first one, click image sequence, and click open. That should, yep, and it did, bring in your entire animation. Now, I'm going to right click on this imported image sequence, modify and interpret footage, use frame rate from file. No, I'm going to do assume this frame rate, and I'm going to do 24 frames per second. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So 24 frames per second is a standard frame rate. I mean, there's probably still, I would probably say that a majority of movie theaters still use the film, and their film is 24 frames per second. If you're not going into like some IMAX theater or something like that, that is more than likely digital, where that's probably going to be 30 frames per second, possibly even more. But 24 and 30 are pretty much your generic standard. 24 has been the standard frame rate for pretty much the entire time film has existed. 24 frames per second. I forget his name, but someone came up with the idea that our own vision can really only see about 24 frames per second. So when you're watching film and you see it at 24 frames per second, our mind kind of just fills in the blanks in between each frame. Just an FYI, a little bit how it works behind the scenes. But 24 frames per second is the standard frame rate for pretty much the entire lifespan of film being created. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag this media over here. And now, if I needed to, I could use my little tools over here. I could cut, I could create transitions and all that kind of stuff, but we're not worried about that. This isn't a film editing course. In order to see what it looks like, I'm going to hit play here. And it seems fine. It's playing pretty normal. I don't see anything wrong with it. And then we're just going to export it. So now that I've got this here, I'm going to go to File and Export. And if you have a different video editor you use, if you use, what's the one for Apple? Final Cut Pro. I think they have iMovie. However you get this exported, more than happy. But this is a pretty standard editing software, so I figured I'd show you in Adobe Premiere, especially because so many of you have an account with Adobe already. So export media. Now in here, I'm going to change the location, and I'm going to go to desktop, Kendrick County College. I'm going to locate the folder. I'm just going to save it in here under bouncing ball animation render. I'm going to leave it as an MP4 and click save. That's just by the default. Match source. My format, I love H.264. It has so many of these different ones in here. MP3, MPEG-2, blah, 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 PNG, QuickTime. So QuickTime is a great one, but I'm going to leave it at H.264. It's going to save out as an MP4. I don't think you can actually have it publish automatically to your different social media accounts. I'm sure you have to connect them somehow. And then down here, I'm going to click export. And now it's going to render. It looks like it might have just crashed on me. And it did. It did crash on me. So, I've got a lot of stuff open, but I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm going to keep going with this video because this could happen to you. I'm just going to go over it all over again. If it didn't crash on you, awesome. I'm going to open up Premiere again. Reopen if you can. Otherwise, you'll have to import the media and all that. So it is asking me, I'm going to close this Learn, close panel. I'm going to import my media again. And that's in the bottom left corner. Desktop, Henry County College, Lab 14, images. Click the first one, click the image sequence checkbox, click open. And now I'm going to click and drag this over to my media. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this right here just to let it know, just in case. I know in older versions you had to do that. I wasn't sure, so I'm going to make sure I click and drag and highlight this, or just click on it, highlight it. I'll play it real quick just to make sure it's working. Oh, but I'll delete it. I'm going to go back in onto my video here, which I'm in the bottom left corner. Try to move out of the way. I'm going to right click and go to modify and interpret footage before I click and drag that in. And I'm going to assume this rate, and I'm going to assume it at 24 frames per second and click OK. I'm now going to re-drag that in. Change sequence settings to match the clip. Yes. Always ask. Yes. Change sequence settings. So now it should play. Perfect. All right. If you press, I guess I don't even have to. Enter. It used to do a render preview kind of thing in here, but I'm good with it. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Export Media. Looks all good. I'm going to hit play. Unable to create image buffer size, whatever. It's fine. Entire source I'm good with. I'm going to change this folder location. Here. And I'm going to rename it right over this and save right over it. Yes, I'm going to save right over that. I'm also going to change this to QuickTime and see if that does anything different. I like QuickTime. I've used QuickTime a lot before. See if that does anything different. I set my file down in the bottom right hand corner. Instead of hitting export this time, I'm going to, well, let's try. Let's just try export. Okay, it did work. Your video was exported successfully. You could export to media encoder, and that should work fine too. I wanted to show you that, but I wanted to save it first in case I had a little crash. I forgot to save it last time. So in my folder now of Lab 14, I should have a .mov file. Open with. Do I have QuickTime? I don't even think I have QuickTime. Let's just see if Media Player will play it. Might not. No. Just once. So that's not going to work because it's not a. I'm probably going to have to download it. Okay, so I'll have to download QuickTime. and that's not going to play it because it's a QuickTime format. Let's export it one more time. I don't have QuickTime installed on this PC. I do have a MacBook, so I'm not too concerned about it. In fact, I could probably grab my Mac, but... and by the time you submit it, I'm going to accept QuickTime files because I'll be able to open it. But let's try H.264 again. Save it out as a MP4. And let's try this one more time. Of course, I didn't hit the save button, but I'm okay with it. I'm going to hit export one more time. I'm saving it out into that same folder, different name, H.264, so it's going to save it out as an MP4 format. Let's try export. Cross our fingers it doesn't crash this time. It did. So my H.264 doesn't work very well anymore. So I'm literally installing QuickTime for Windows real quick. All right, now let's just go ahead back to open with QuickTime Player just once. I'll hit no for now. I can always change it later. All right, so now I've got QuickTime, full screen, Control L to put it on a loop, Control F for full screen. And now I've got my exported bouncing ball animation rendered out for you. So maybe I should put it over here, so I don't know if you could even see the whole thing. So there's my bouncing ball, right? Let's close out of this. I'll have to figure out how to have that not open on startup. So here's my bouncing balls. Let me know if you have any questions. This is all I'm looking for. The H.264 wasn't working for me for some weird reason. My keyboard disappeared because something crashed on my computer while I was working on this. I'm sure you're going to run into some of the same things. They do have the computers at the school that you can use as well. If you need additional details, just shoot me a message. I'll let you know which ones do have that software. You're probably going to need your email, school email, and or school ID to gain access. But submit a QuickTime. That'll work perfectly fine. If you can get the H.264, the MP4 file uploaded, that's great. Whatever works best for you. If you want to, whatever file format you can submit it as, I will be able to get it open. If I can't, I'll let you know. But let's stick with QuickTime just in case anything else isn't working 100%. If you do have any questions, I'm glad you were able to see that I run into some of the same issues that you guys do when it comes to rendering and exporting and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, anyway, I'll see you soon. Message me on Canvas inbox with any questions, and we'll take it from there. Thanks.